Welcome, everybody to tonight's live stream. Hey, nerd, how's it going? Anna, hello. Lambden, Blaine, of course. Welcome. Um, so, what we're going to do today is are you guys seeing the comments popping up? I hope so. Um, I have the comments popping up on the right hand side. Let me know because this software that I'm using is kind of weird. Um, it's on browser based software. Hey, Stephanie, how's it going? Yes, okay, thanks. Lambden, thanks. Um, and I always have the comments coming up like this because I know that when you do a live replay, hey Keith, how's it going? I know that when you do a live replay, sometimes yeah, you can look at the comments or have a comment thing, but some people don't know how to do it and they get confused. And I like having the comments coming up like this. Um, I like the other style with my other computer, but like I said, I'm still in Monterrey. Um, just to catch up while we're letting people settle in and get into the room or get into the space here, our live stream. Um, real quick, uh, I'm still in Monterrey. I will be back in San Miguel by the end of next weekend. Next weekend's live stream. We'll be back from San Miguel. You'll probably see a familiar live stream. Not like this, but I mean, I like both of them, but I like my old software better because this one I'm on an iPad, and sometimes with an iPad it doesn't work as good as a computer, or it doesn't work exactly like a computer, and you have to kind of work around things. So I'm kind of working around things here. Um, but I got it to work. But I'm in a panic right before the live stream because everything kind of like doesn't work, and so I got it to work. But real quick, just my personal. I always give an update of what I've been up to. I had my PET scan on Monday. I got my results, and or was yeah Monday I think it was that I had my PET scan, and my results came out negative. I'm cancer free, and that means that after 5 years, I'm considered in the safe zone of remission. And so that's great news. I had a tooth extraction, and thank God my tooth isn't, I don't have any swelling. That went well. There was some, thanks, Blaine, thanks, Lance. There was a risk because I've been radiated in that area. I had to get a surgeon to do it. Um, so thanks, Lambden. Thanks, Stephanie. Um, and I had to get a surgeon to do it, an actual facial surgeon, a facial surgeon or maxillofacial surgeon. And I had to get him to do it. And there's a risk because when you get your bones, the bones here have blood vessels that go through and supply blood to your body. When you radiate that area, the blood vessels don't. I guess you might say they shrink or they become uh, less circulation goes into that area. So, and you need blood to heal. So you can have some serious problems. But thank God, everything's great. The surgeon did a great job. Got rid of the infection. The only thing is every time I have to get a tooth extraction, and the tooth extraction is due to all the radiation and tore up my mouth. I guess you might say. But that's the good news. We're heading back to San Miguel soon. My in-laws are doing great, and so it's good news. I still now the only thing is I have to get on the other side. I ended up chewing on a piece of candy, and my dental work broke there, but it's not something that needs an extraction. I'm just going to go to the dentist now this week and have it taken care of. I got the go ahead to go and do that. Regular dental work is not a problem. It's when you have to extract because the healing process is really bad. So tonight we're going to discuss why you need an RFC here in Mexico. Okay. Um, I have seen some stuff on Facebook. I know I've touched on this subject many times. Uh, that you do need an RFC. And the reason why you need an RFC is I'm going to explain. A lot of people have used the argument that I don't pay tax. Let's first explain what an RFC is. An RFC is a tax ID number. Here in Mexico, you have two. Well, actually, Mexican citizens have three. But you, as a resident, if you're going to be living here and you're not a dual national, you'll have two. The CURP, which is an identification number for population registration purposes, and then you have the RFC, which is a tax ID number. Mexican nationals have what they call an INE, I-N-E. Sometimes if you ever go into a store or something, they'll say, "Can I have your INE?" Well, actually, for residents, your resident card counts as your INE. The INE is a voter registration number. So in Mexico, Mexicans have three identifying numbers, and in Mexico, residents have two. Okay, and even if you never gotten an RSC, and you probably didn't know it, but you have two. Prior to 2022, they used to have, if you were a resident, you didn't have an RFC number, or even if you were a Mexican and you didn't have an RFC number, there was a generic number, okay, that they could put when they do what they call a factura, okay? Now, what happened in 2022, there was some tax reform that was conducted or done, and the tax reform bill included that every citizen and every resident of Mexico is required to get an RFC, okay, the tax ID number, for purposes of taxing. I've explained this before. Most people say, "Well, I don't pay taxes here in Mexico. My income is from the United States. I pay taxes in the United States. I don't pay taxes in Mexico." That doesn't matter. Um, it's not about you paying taxes in Mexico. It's about how the system works. Okay. In Mexico, they track all financial transactions, not all, but most large financial transactions. Okay. One of the ways for people to get around tax or to evade taxes here in Mexico is first pay in cash. And also, there was another way. For example, you'll go to a store here and you'll buy something, or you maybe go to the doctor and they'll say, "Do you need a factura?" Okay. The reason for that is it's kind of like deductions here in Mexico. When you're making money in Mexico and you're paying taxes, you can deduct certain expenses. Hey, Cindy, you can deduct certain expenses. For example, your medical expenses, you buy a car, stuff like that. That's how people here do their taxes. But here's the thing, it's different than the United States. In the United States, I want to deduct this. I just put it on my tax form and I'm on the honor system. Okay. But in Mexico, you have to have proof that you bought that car or whatever. Yes, in the United States, you need proof too. You need to save your receipts. But if the IRS never comes knocking on your door, nothing's going to happen. But in Mexico, the way it works is you have to have this thing called a factura. So when you spend money, okay, you say, "Yes, I need a factura." Okay. And they'll give you a factura. The factura is it's a receipt, kind of receipt. And it has the RFC of the person doing the business with you and your RFC. Okay. If you're the taxpayer, and I'm talking about Mexican citizens, or if you're making money here in Mexico, and the reason why this is important is so that you can understand. If you're paying the taxpayer, you have the factura, and all those facturas are kept in a computer. I mean, not in the computer, in a computer system, not in a computer, but in a computer system. So at the end of the year, when you file your taxes, everything's already on record of what you spent. In other words, you don't even have to go look. It's already in the system. They say you spent 1 million pesos this year in different expenses. You can actually go onto the website and look at your expenses and all your facturas. Okay. If you're the taxpayer, if you're not the taxpayer, if you're the business, of course you made income, right? The business needs to declare that income. The way they declare the income is through the factura. So basically, there's two RFCs that are on that factura. There's the RFC of the taxpayer and the RFC of the business. Okay. And the thing with most large financial transactions, like for example, you buy a car or you buy a house, you need an RFC. What happens is they make a factura. So basically, the company can report the income and you can report the expense. Now, what happens if you don't pay? Hey, Bruno, what happens if you don't pay taxes, okay, in Mexico? Well, before, what they used to do is, or if you were poor and you didn't, did everything in cash and you really didn't make any money. And what people would do is they just wouldn't get an RFC. And when someone would buy it, when you do a large transaction, like buying a car or whatever, you would use what they call a generic RFC. Okay. Hey, Lambden. You would use what they call a generic RFC. All right. So that generic RFC was a generic number that if you didn't have one, just put that there so that the person that was selling the car could report the income. But the problem that the tax authority has is okay, but who bought the car? We really don't know who bought the car because it's a generic RFC. Yeah, there's a name and everything else, but we don't know if this person really exists. Okay. And the problem with that is a lot of businesses were laundering money. They had these people called factureros, that their business was to create facturas from fake companies, either like, for example, hey, I wanna pretend I'm making all these expenses. So they would create companies, or I want to report this income that's not legitimate, but I want to make it go through a legitimate source. So I'm going to say I sold 10 cars to somebody. Okay. So what they would do is they would make a factura for the 10 cars and they would say Joe Smith, John, Mary Garza, blah, 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 all those 10 people, but with the generic RFC. So what it looked like was a business was doing legitimate business, but and these people that were making the facturas would get paid $100 or whatever for per factura. Okay. And they were making a lot of money. This was a way of laundering money. So the tax authority said, no more. What we need is we need the person making the transaction, and we also need the business RFC. So now we know that if they sell a car, they're selling a car to a legitimate person. Now, does that prevent money laundering? Not necessarily, because maybe someone could pay me to say, I'm going to facturar in your name. They also have this thing called prestanombres, where people will actually lend their name and their RFC to people to launder money. But that's beside the point. I'm trying to give you a background of why you need an RFC. And I'm trying to get rid of some of the misconceptions on, because many people have been very resistant in getting on RFC. And the two main excuses for not getting on RFC, other than it's inconvenient, the two main excuses for not getting on RFC were, I don't pay taxes in Mexico, so why do I need to get a tax ID number? Okay, that's number one. Number two, I don't like my personal information or biometrics being shared, or I don't like sharing my biometrics with the government of Mexico, because you do get your biometrics taken now with the RFC. And I'm privacy folks, but security, privacy. Now I'm going to debunk those two myths. First, you don't need to pay taxes to be required to have an RC. Like I explained before, if you're on the purchasing end of something, they need to identify the person that purchased it. Doesn't mean you're going to pay taxes. Doesn't mean the tax authority is going to come knocking on your door because saying that you owe taxes because you bought a car or you went and you deposited money in a bank. Maybe if you deposited weird transactions, yes. So that's number one. Okay. So it has nothing to do with you paying taxes. Yes, it does for Mexican citizens or anybody making money here in Mexico. But if you don't pay taxes in Mexico, having an RFC has nothing to do with you paying Mexican taxes or no. That's number one myth debunked. The second myth that I'd like to debunk is private information. I don't like giving my information. I don't like having people. Well, if you're a resident of Mexico, you got your residency card, guess what? The government of Mexico has your biometrics. The government of Mexico has all your information, or your passport information. So what you're giving the government of Mexico when you get your RFC is nothing different than when you got your residency. Okay? You still take fingerprints. You still now the only thing with the government, I mean, the RFC, is they do take a retinal scan. But fingerprints, retinal scan, they have you in a database. It doesn't matter. You're not protecting your privacy by not getting an RFC. I don't know how many times I have to tell people this. If the government of Mexico wants your personal information, they already have it. Bef- Period. If you got residency, as a matter of fact, they even have copies of your bank statements if you went through the consulate. So they even have copies of your financial information. So anybody that goes and argues that I don't want to give up my personal information to the government, well, you gave up your personal information to get residency. It's no different with the RFC. Okay. And actually, there's been talk since 2022 um, of giving people their RFC right off the bat when they get residency, but that hasn't happened. Now, some people do have an RFC that have been living here for a long time. Um, that those people that have that RFC, they might have done a large transaction, and at one point they would just assign you an RFC number. Okay. So some people, you might even go, if you've been here for a long time, been 15 years or whatever, and you decide to go to your RFC, you're going to go to SAT and they're going to say, you already have one. You're still going to need to go to SAT, even if you have an RFC number, because number one, you need to know what it is. Number two, hey, listen, Henry, how's it going? Listen, Henry, Henry, how's it going? You still need that RC number because whenever they ask you, now here's the thing, they're going to ask you for certain things. When someone in a business says, do you want to get a factura or I need your constancia? Okay, it's an actual thing that you print out and it tells you what your tax status is and everything else with your RFC. And also, you're still going to have to go in and get your biometrics taken, even if you have an RFC number already, because you've got to be able to access the RFC system if you change your address, if you need anything. If you need to print your constancia, you need to log into the portal and print your constancia. Some constancias, they won't accept it if it's not recent. As a matter of fact, if you buy a house, it has to be within the last 2 or 3 months, I believe. I had, like, when I went to go buy a house, I had to print out my constancia, my current constancia, because a constancia tells you your tax situation. For example, when you get your RFC, if you're a resident, you don't pay taxes, it will say an individual with no tax liability to the government of Mexico. Okay. Or I forgot what the actual constancia is. Okay. If you're a person that earns money, it'll be a person that earns money. So they need that constancia because let's say and there's one for being retired. So if I change from working to retiring, I need to change my constancia fiscal, okay, which is your tax bracket or your tax status, okay? So that's why they'll say, I need, for example, when I bought my BYD, my two BYDs that we own now, I had to get my constancia. One was under my name, one was under my wife's name. And my wife, we had to print out a current constancia. So you need that. Now, because here's the thing with a car. The title, you know how you get a title with your car? Well, when you buy a car here, the factura is your actual title. You have this thing called the tarjeta de circulación. That's your license and registration. But your title, if you ever want to sell it, is the original factura when you bought the car. Okay. So, and if they use a generic, now here's the thing with the generic number. I know people have said, oh, I just use a generic number. 1 second. I need to, my saliva production. Hold on just 1 second. Okay, I need the generic number. My beautiful wife's in the room. Hi. um, I use the generic number. Now here's the thing with the generic number. Remember how I said before at the very beginning that there used to be this generic number if you weren't identified as a taxpayer. What happened after 2022 is the Mexican government didn't realize when they required everybody to get an RFC is that a good majority of the population didn't have one. There was a time where the appointments to go get an RFC were 6 months, 3 months, even a year at one point, because they were so backlogged trying to get everybody into the system that SAT, which is the tax authority, said, SAT, which is the tax authority, said, okay, we're going to give you a break. we'll let you use the generic number until we are sure that everybody has an RFC. And actually, within the law, the generic RFC was abolished. Okay. But for administrative purposes, we're going to allow people to still use the generic RFC because we understand that we're behind on issuing the RFC. And it's not fair that somebody that doesn't have an RFC that tried to get an RFC can't do financial transactions or can't get a bank account or can't do that anything because I mean, it wasn't their fault. It was SAT's fault. Now, here's the thing. There's still a small amount of transactions that they're allowing the generic RFC. Okay. But that is going away. All right. Banks changed the regulations that all people having a bank account here in Mexico needed an RFC, not just your residency card or your INE. You need an RFC. All the banks are starting to comply. For a while, the banks, oh, not a problem, and everything else. Um, uh, yeah, not a problem. They were letting people get they were still, even after 2022, letting people get their bank account without an RFC. But little by little, those exemptions for those banking regulations have gone away. So if you go to a bank, 90% of them will say you still need an RFC, even Intercam. Intercam actually would let you open a bank account with just a passport. Okay. And Intercam is an international bank that kind of got around the banking regulations in Mexico because they kind of said, we're not a Mexican bank, but they are. And they've been told, you will comply with banking regulations. So you'll find that Intercam has changed a lot of their policies. Now, I do know that some people have said they still can get one without an RFC, but literally, if you need a bank account, here's the other thing. You need to hook up to CFE, the electric. You need to hook up to your water. They will require a constancia. As a matter of fact, CFE at one point was going back and telling people you need to get your consignment. As a matter of fact, we even got a notice. Oh no, actually, we didn't get a notice because my wife, the electricity is under my wife's name, but people were getting notices saying, "Hey, please send us your constancia. If not, your electricity will be cut off." Now, I do notice that some people they didn't do it to everybody. They just they're trying to get what do you call it, compliance as quickly as they can. But the thing we need to understand is we're a couple of years behind. The system, and actually, they even started a new factura system that won't even accept the generic RC. Okay, it's factura 2.0. The problem is that some people haven't transitioned over to 2.0 fully, some businesses. So that's why you can still walk into one or two businesses and get a factura with a generic RFC, but that's going away. Once 1.0 or Factura 1.0 goes away, you will not hardly be able to do any financial transactions in Mexico. Hook up your light, hook up all your stuff. You will not be able to do any of that stuff. And I know people are resistant. Number one, I'm lazy and I don't want to go and do it. Number two, I don't know how to do it. And Tom was just saying right here, he had actually got a facilitator here. Actually, I'm going to put this up there. Uh, he did it myself with no problems, but might use a facilitator. He's going to use a facilitator. There's facilitators that are helping get your RFC. Okay. So it's not as hard as it used to be. Okay. I got my RFC. I actually went to this. I made an appointment on the online system. I went and got my RFC. I reported with my little thumb drive. They tell you to take a thumb drive because you get these crypto keys or cryptography keys that whenever you sign on to the website, you need to put your keys, their files that you need to upload to the website to prove it's you. There's a lot of security. No one's going to steal your information. Okay. Um, and actually, even to log onto the website, it's pretty hard. Let me put it this way: it took me 2 days to figure out how to log on to the website. Actually, what I was doing at one point is we have friends that are accountants, and I was just giving them a copy of the key and telling them to log into my thing and please make the changes I need to make, which is not good security practice, but there are people that are family members and stuff that could do that. But I finally figured out how to get into the system. Um, so you really do need an RFC. if you're a citizen or you're a resident. Number one, it's the law. Okay. Bottom line. And the law states all citizens and residents need to have an RFC. Okay. Now, I do know at one point SAT was not giving to temporary residents. I think that's changed, but they were not, they were prioritizing permanent residents because, like I said, they were behind. Okay. And so, and they're probably still behind at some point because the systems haven't totally gone over to 2.0. And you're going to say, maybe you'll say, oh, well, I don't need do any, I don't need to buy a car. I don't need, trust me, eventually you will be asked for your RFC. As a matter of fact, even if you go to the hospital, because the hospital will, even to go to the hospital, you will be documented because they will factura because you are giving them an ingreso, you're giving them income. They have to fill out a factura. And if you don't have an RFC, how are you going to get admitted to the hospital? That's how basic this is. And I understand the problem we have with people that have been living here for a while is that, well, it wasn't that way. I've been living here 15 years and this is the way it's been. Well, the way it's been, people need to understand that Mexico has changed. I came here in 2017 and things have changed drastically. Everything from the immigration process to, as a matter of fact, I never thought an R&E program was going to happen, to the R&E program going away, to them cracking down on border runners. Um, all sorts of stuff has changed. And the old Mexico that people know, I know people that have lived here many years, the old Mexico is gone. There used to be a time that Mexico was very lenient. Oh, we'll follow the rules this time, but no follow the rules the other time. I do know one, even one YouTuber says, here in Mexico, rules are just suggestions or laws are just suggestions. Well, that used to be maybe a while back. It's not, and even if there is a little bit of that suggestion part in there, it's going away little by little. Okay. The other thing we need to understand is that the problem is here in Mexico is yes, maybe, I don't know. And this is why I say this is very important when you look on Facebook groups because someone says, hey, I, I use the customs thing. I went through customs and they charged me. I had two laptops and they charged me. And then you get 50 different response. Well, I've been traveling 10 years and never got my extra laptop charged. I've been traveling 15 years. Just because someone else got the leniency doesn't mean the rules don't exist. And the problem is when the rules are, and the one thing you have need to understand in Mexico, when they follow the rules are followed to a T. I'll give you an example. Names. My wife and I got registered on marriage here. My wife, when we registered on marriage, the notario didn't put her second last name, the Mastrine. We've done, I don't know how many transactions without her, used our marriage certificate and everything else, and nobody caught it. I went to register the vehicle, my vehicle, in San Miguel. It's like, sorry, this marriage certificate is no good. That's the rules. And so it doesn't matter. Hey, I've used this marriage certificate for 50 million things. I don't care. It's the rules. Unless the names match, it's the rules. So you need to understand when the rules are actually implemented, the rules are the rules, and there's no way you're going to get around it. And I don't care what anybody says about, oh, if you just give them a little bit of money and all that, that I'll tell you what, if you lived in a period of time when that was the norm, it's not happening anymore. Most government employees are not going to put, I mean, most, I'm not going to say it doesn't happen. It happens everywhere. It happens in the United States too, no matter how, or in Canada or whatever country you're in. But that idea of you can just give 50 pesos or 100 pesos or 200 pesos to get anything done is going away here in Mexico. No government employee wants to lose their job nowadays for the sake of a couple of hundred pesos. Does it still happen? I'm almost sure it does. Okay. But I'm telling you right now, things are changing in Mexico and they change constantly and they're changing more. As a matter of fact, systems are getting upgraded. Um, all sorts of things are happening here in Mexico that just were unheard of 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So anybody that comes to you and says, I've been living here 20 years and it's never been that way. Well, you've been living in a bubble for 20 years. Well, probably for 15 years, it wasn't that way. And for the past 5 years, you've been living in a bubble. Okay. So I'm telling you right now, and I'm not I tell you the truth. I tell you how it is. I'm not going to sugarcoat Mexico. I'm not going to tell you to go run to the border every 6 months because, oh, it's a, no, you know what? I'm going to tell you what the risks are. You can lose everything. Okay. That's the bottom line. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to lie to you because I want more views. I don't make money off of this. And that's why I'm telling you, you really need an RFC. And I've seen in recent posts about the RFC, and people just don't understand. And that's why I came on tonight. So um, uh, that's why I came on tonight so that I could tell you why you need an RFC. And it's getting a little bit more strict, okay, and to the point where it's almost totally strict. So that's that's why I pick this. I pick up little things from expat groups and stuff like that on Facebook. And some of the answers I saw were, ridiculous. I don't want to give them like I said, I don't want to give up my personal information. Well, the government already has your personal information. The only way to not give up your personal information is to be here illegally. I mean, and if they find out you're here illegally, then you're going to get your personal information taken. Uh, so the other, like I said, the main two culprits are I don't want to give my personal information. The second one is I don't pay taxes. There's no reason I don't. And you know what? I know we come from countries where they're actually the U.S. can be very predatory when it comes to taxes, and we don't trust the tax man. I mean, we've been raised not to trust the tax man. And actually, I'll tell you what, here in Mexico, people have been raised not to trust the taxman. uh, and you'll hear stories about, I mean, major companies not paying any taxes. I had we have a friend of ours whose father was very prominent. And we were talking, and I was like, "Oh, well, I'm worried about, because we were talking about renting, I think it was, and I'm worried about the tax liability." Oh, no. And she even said, nobody pays taxes here in Mexico. Okay, that was the old way. Why? Because her father had a business and he did this facturaron, facturas, fake facturas. Not only that, but maybe did most of his business in cash. Most of the time, you'll see most people won't accept credit cards or they want only cash for all their work. Most of the manual labor, everybody wants cash because they don't want to report that to the tax authority. So I get it. People don't trust the tax man. Okay. I'm not trying to sit here to try to tell you to trust the tax man. What I am here to try to tell you is your life's going to get impossible if you don't get an RFC. That's the bottom line. And if it's not impossible yet, and yeah, I don't need a bank account. Oh, that's the other thing. I don't need a bank account. So why do I need to get an RFC? Okay, well, when you need to get admitted into the hospital and you don't have an RFC, like right now, I'm almost sure most hospitals still are using the generic, but eventually, well, I'm sorry, unless you're, sorry, we can't admit you because you don't have an RFC and we don't have a tax number to identify you. Um, Stuff is simple, and other people, we rent, so I don't need to hook up my utilities. Well, what if one day you buy a house and now all of a sudden you need an RFC? So let me put it this way, as simple as it may seem that you don't need one, you don't use a bank account, all of that stuff, it's going to get harder to live around the rules. Okay, that's what I'm trying to say. So just get one. And here's the thing: if you don't know, or you don't want to do it yourself, or you facilitators, there's plenty of facilitators that are doing it. They'll take you to the tax authority. There's some facilitators that even have connections where you don't even have to go. Now, the only thing with that is you can't get into your constancia. Uh, but if you just want to have a piece of paper saying that I got an RFC and give it at whatever point. Now, the other thing is the CURP that I talked about before, that's on your residency card. You're issued a CURP when you are become a resident. So you have that ID number already. The RFC is the one that you need. So and you're not going to have the tax man knocking at your door because I don't know, they think you're making money here. And if you're not making money here, you're not paying taxes. That's all you do. You're not paying taxes. As a matter of fact, there's even a constancia for a person that doesn't pay taxes in Mexico. Okay. So that will be your constancia that you don't have any tax liability in Mexico. So now, why am I bringing this up now other than I've seen it in Facebook groups? The reason why I'm seeing it in Facebook groups is, guess what? Remember how I said the rules were getting stricter? Well, not too long ago, I actually logged into Amazon and I decided I was going to order something on Amazon, but it was imported, something from the United States. Actually, I use Amazon US that ship. There's certain items that you can ship to Mexico. And all of a sudden, it asked me for my RFC or my CURP. Okay. And I'm like, wait a second, why do I need my RFC? It turns out there's new regulations and new law. If you shop on Temu, actually Mercado Libre started requiring an RFC. I have to give in order to do Mercado Libre. The tax authority is getting a lot more strict. Okay, and the imports you have to pay. There's this thing called EVA and taxes that you have to pay. So they are tracking the EVA. Now, I am thinking what's going to happen is, yes, you need your CURP or your RFC. Eventually, Amazon's going to require will only accept an RFC. Okay. And as a matter of fact, I think, or Nerd said that Mercado Libre, uh, uh, he was saying that in Mercado Libre they were requiring an RFC. I'll go back to the questions and the comments. So that's why I'm seeing all these like, how come I need an RFC? How come I need to get my CURP? And of course, it's the same thing. How come I need to give my personal information? Well, you're giving your personal information already to Amazon. Just the fact that you've signed up for Amazon, they have more personal information on you than you think. Um, so that's what's going on. Now Temu, and they're trying to track before, for example, Temu, there's a lot of items from China. They're trying to track anything imported. If you order something from Amazon and it's imported into Mexico, even on Amazon Mexico, if it's coming from the United States, coming from China, coming from another country, they'll require you to have an RC on file. And that is for tracking purposes. It doesn't mean that they're tracking your purchases so that you can pay taxes. You're going to pay the taxes because Amazon charges you the taxes up front when you order and it's imported, or it's built into the price. If it's Amazon Mexico, it's built in the price. If it's Amazon US or Amazon, I don't know, Canada, and you're sending it here, it'll actually say, this is how much you paid EVA, this is how much you paid for import fees, this is how much you paid for shipping. Okay. Now with Amazon Mexico, it'll say it costs 1,000 pesos, period. And that covers everything. But out of that 1,000 pesos, they're paying the import tax and everything else. That's why you'll find that things on Amazon Mexico sometimes are a little bit more expensive than on Amazon US, if you're so. So that's what we're looking at as far as needing an RFC. This is how basic it's getting. Even an order from Amazon or to buy something on Mercado Libre. And I think Mercado Libre at one point, if you didn't have an RFC, you had to pay an extra tax. Okay. So this is how important the RFC is. It's not just a matter of, oh, well, I got the generic number. Oh, well, I don't make any purchases. Well, maybe you want to use Amazon, and the only way to get the stuff from Amazon is from the United get it shipped from the United States. Hey, my son's in the room. Noah, great to see you. Popping in to give my support. Thanks for your support. Uh, I'll give you a call later because I have some questions, Noah. Uh, so um, that's why you need the RFC here in Mexico. Okay. Um, will you affect? Now, here's the thing, and I actually promised someone that wasn't able to make my broadcast. I promised him I'd do it early in on the stream, and I totally forgot. He actually messaged me and says, "Hey, what if I don't live in Mexico right now?" This individual, I'll give you his situation. This individual basically got their residency ahead of time because, of course, he didn't know whether the RNE, whether the income was going up. He actually, I think, uh, uh, he actually basically, I think, qualified on income, but he was, I'm making my plans now. And I've given this advice before. If you can qualify for residency now, and even if you're going to move in 5 years, because you don't have to live here, get your residency as soon as possible because the requirements have been going up and up and up and up. So he got his residency, but he's still living and working. He still needs to retire. He's working and living in the United States. And he asked me, "Hey, look, I just come and visit Mexico, of course, with his residency. uh, and uh, I'm, I, I don't have time. I come for a week at a time. I come and visit, and we visit different places and stuff like that. I don't have an RFC. Here's the thing: if you don't live here and you're in that position, it's not going to really affect you because you don't need to hook up your electric. You don't need to do a lot of these things. You don't need to buy a car. My advice to you is, okay, and you don't have time to get an RFC because sometimes when you get in the appointment system, it's like in 3 months, but you're having to come back and forth. If you can't get an RFC, the government's going to understand because really the government only cares when you're going to be doing facturas, okay, when you're going to be doing these financial transactions. I know this sounds counterintuitive to what I said about you need to get an RFC. Well, if you're living here, yes, you need to have one because that that's going to uh, that is going to what you call it. That RFC is what's going to enable you to do basic things here in Mexico. If you don't need that RFC right away, or let's say you're getting settled in, you're looking at houses, you have time, then that's fine. You're not going to get arrested. You're not going to get fined. Nothing's going to happen if you don't have an RFC. You're not going to get prosecuted, or it's illegal in a sense because that's a law, but nothing's going to happen to you if you don't have one. What's going to happen to you is they're going to say, "Sorry, you can't buy this car unless you get one. Sorry, you can't buy this house unless you get one. Sorry, you can't get admitted to the hospital unless you get one. Sorry, you can't hook up your electricity bill until you get one." So my advice is, if you're in that position where you're in my friend's position that messaged me, um, if you're in that position, don't worry about it. When you move to Mexico, you'll get it done. Facilitators have a good way of getting it done pretty quickly. So it's not like you're going to, and by the time you get here and you retire, let's may say in 5 years, the system's already going to be already up and running well enough to where you can get your RFC pretty quick. So I wouldn't worry if you're in that position. And I know there's a lot of people that are in that position. I have another good friend in San Miguel de Allende that was coming back and forth. He's building a studio in San Miguel, and he was coming back and forth, and he basically got his RFC, but he was doing some other stuff. But it was after several trips, and he was having to come back and come back and come back. So, that is the one point that, I want to bring up, that not to worry about. If you're living here, yes, worry about it. Get it as quickly as possible. Now, like I said, I have still encountered times when they've asked me, "Oh, do you have an RFC or do I just use a generic one?" And of course, I usually most of the time say, "Oh, here's my RFC. I have it on my phone." a constancia on my phone because sometimes you just need the number. And other times, and then also, I also need to facturar many times because I get a lot of medical treatments here. And the factura is what I send to my insurance company so I can get reimbursed. So I use my RFC. So, but before I used to just say, just use the generic one. Even if I had an RFC, because I was a lot quicker because I didn't have to reach into my phone. I was lazy and I didn't have to reach into my phone. So you're still going to find instances where they say, hey, as a matter of fact, even I think uh, with BYD, they were still using the generic RFC for some people. Uh, so uh, Matt, yes, the CPF. You know what, Matt? I lived in Brazil. Actually, I was a diplomat in Brazil. I got a diplomatic ID, but they issued me a CPF. And one thing in Brazil, even when you go to get groceries, all your consumption, you actually give your CPF number to the grocery store. This is kind of the same thing that's happening in Mexico right now. And you also needed the CP. Yeah, you needed the CPF for everything. I had like a little ID. It was a little ID, like a little book that I had to carry around with me everywhere, and it identified me as as a U.S. diplomat. And but it had my CPF number, and I also had um, a permit for firearms. But I had those two IDs that I had to carry with me all the time there in Brazil, and you needed to put your CPF for everything. I remember that, Matt. And actually, Matt, I forgot because I was going to say, oh, when I lived in Brazil, there used to be this number. I forgot it was the CPF. I'm so used to the RFC. I'm getting old. I don't remember the details, but thanks, Noah, for dropping in. I don't remember the details, but it is the CPF. And that's the same thing that's happening in Mexico. Eventually, that's going to happen here. Brett Jones. Okay, let's go to some of the comments. Brett made a comment here. You got your RFC long before biometric went into place. The only thing I can do now is log into the website. Yeah, and actually, Brett, um, one thing I will say, and print a new constancia, but I haven't needed one yet. We have needed constancias because we just bought a car, two cars actually. We sold our property here in Monterrey. We also bought a property here in Monterrey. Uh, but I'll tell you what, Brett, all you really need is the number because they'll ask you for the RFC number for the factura. Um, I did need to change my constancia. I'll tell you what, some facilitators, what they will do, and I did mine through a facilitator, they have contacts within, or they have access, they're accountants that have access to the system, and they put you in the system and they generate an RFC number for you. Well, they don't take your biometrics. And so I had an RFC, I had a constancia, I kept it with me, a copy of it, and it was old. And then I was like, I went, where was that I went that I needed it? And they were like, oh, this constancia is old. You need to get a new one. And I'm like, oh shoot. I actually had to, that's when they passed a new law. And I called the accountant and he was like, oh no, you have to go in and get it's called the e-firma, the e-sign is what e-firma in English is e-sign. I had to do it. But actually, I got around with a regular RFC. Actually, even when I went to the bank to report my RFC, I didn't have to give my constancia. They just wanted my RFC number. Um, but now the bank, I think, is requiring a constancia. And actually, Brett, I think there's a way of printing out your constancia without getting into the website. But from what because my sister-in-law says, oh yeah, you can do it. I did it without having the e-firma, and my wife had to get the e-firma. And but uh, I don't know how she did it because I've tried to get on the website. I tried to look she even gave me a link, and I'm like, no, that still requires you to log in. So I have no idea. But so the visit to SAT is on your list. Yeah. Yeah. I would get the earfirma. And I'll tell you what, Brett, it's a pain in the rear. Even with the keys that they give you, you take a little USB drive with you, and they're just files. They're crypto keys or whatever. You upload them to the website. and it took me a while to figure out how to get in there. It's not the best system. Okay, so let's get to some of the stuff here. Yeah, nerd. The last time I looked, if you tried selling on Mercado Libre and not provide an RFC, they would deduct 30% in selling price for EVA. This was a while ago. I'm sure things changed since. Yeah, and they still do now. Actually, if you buy stuff, because at one point, if you were buying stuff, they'll charge you the 30% as a person buying, and that's what happened at that time. So Tom's got a question here. Curious, would you equate the corp or the RFC number to your quote unquote social security number? Actually, Tom, here's the thing. If you're a Mexican citizen, your INE, your corp, and your RFC are equivalent to what your social security number does in the United States. So basically your corp serves as, for example, your social security number in the United States is an ID number, right? They ask you for your social security number whenever you, and then your RFC, your social security number is your tax ID number. Your national ID number is your social security number. Your corp, which is your corp, and your RFC is your tax ID number. And then in Mexico, Mexican citizens have the INE. So if for a Mexican citizen, the INE, the corp, and the RFC are the equivalent of one social security number. I mean, they're not equivalent; they're different numbers, and they're very similar. The numbers are very similar, the corp and the RFC. But you have three ID numbers here, like I was saying, instead of two. I mean, if you're a Mexican city, you have three, and then if you're a resident, you have two. So, but it's equivalent to your social security number. When we are permanent and do not have an RC, soon we may want to buy a property. What do you need to do? We will get fined for. No, you won't get fined for not having one. You just won't be able to do the process, Anna. That's the problem. Like I said, you're not going to get arrested. You're not going to get fined. You're not going to get in trouble. But they're just going to tell you until you get an RFC, you can't sign the paperwork, unless you get a notario that'll say we can still use the generic RFC. But most notarios are changing that now. Uh, what you need to do is I have a video on how to get your to I think if I'm not mistaken. Uh, on getting an appointment. You have to go to the SAT website and make an appointment. Depend. What I would do, to be honest with you, Anna, I did it here in Monterrey. I knew where the SAT office was. I knew where to go. Uh, what most people are doing is they're hiring a facilitator. I think it cost me 3,000 pesos to do mine, but I did it like Brett. I had a RFC number, but I didn't have a constancia, current constancia, and I had to end up going in. So, but if you get a facilitator they will take you. Now they won't go in with you, just like immigration, but they will go with you and to the SAT office on your appointment. They'll wait outside. You go inside. You get on a computer. You fill out your personal stuff. And then basically they give you a crypto key, and then you have to go. They take your picture. They take your biometrics, and you walk out with a thumb drive and a printed constancia. Uh, and so that should be the way to get it. Another example, when you move to Mexico, you adjust to Mexico, not the other way around. Exactly. I agree. And let me see here. I'm going to go over some more stuff. And okay, Tom. Yeah, the real ID and basically internal passport if you fly domestically. Yeah, the real ID stuff was something I have a Texas driver. Most of the states have kind of gotten real ID compliant. I don't know how many states aren't. They were given some time to become real ID compliant. So I asked our facilitator twice to help with RFC and was brushed off like it's too much work. The cell number and fixed address is a much of an issue as getting a bank account now. Yeah, actually, RA, they are very picky. You do need a cell phone number. The reason why is if you lose your password or you lose your stuff, they text you a code. Um, so you will need a Mexican phone. I do suggest people get a Mexican phone number. Uh, I have two. I still maintain a U.S. phone number. I mean, I have two cell phone plans on my. I use eSIMs. I pay for Cricket in the U.S. and both my wife and I have those phones. We have a U.S. phone number. I can make 1-800 calls. It's just more convenient for me. But there's other solutions like if you want to keep your bank account and everything else, such as Google Voice, Vonage, I believe has an app. Uh, the thing with Google Voice is you have to initiate it over there and sign up for the account and get it working over there and port your number over there. And you got to do it from the States. I think they have some security stuff. So uh so you need to understand that it's probably best, even if it's just a prepaid phone, or you go to Telcel and get your 200 pesos a month. I mean, literally the cheapest plan is 200 pesos a month. You can get prepaid and you just go to the OXXO and you pay your 200 pesos a month. So let me see here. You have both Google Voice and Vonage. They have apps and call via Wi-Fi and cell data. And actually, Brett, if I'm not mistaken, both. Well, I know Google Voice does, but Vonage too accept text messages. So if you have U.S. Bank and you need to get text messages, you can do it through Google Voice. So okay, I guess nerd, you're able to get it through email. I gave him my phone number. I don't know. I don't know what the Okay, Lance. Widely unpopular opinion, Mexico needs to crack down on digital limos, up the requirements if you're not retired or retirement age. Um, that's been said before, to be honest with you. Oh, wow. I didn't know, Brett, that the text messages with Vonage. I thought Vonage did allow text messages. Um, there are a couple of other services. I mean, actually, you can go and look up. There's several apps where you can get a U.S. number and get text messages. Um, yeah, there's been a lot of talk about cracking down on digital nomads. As far as the requirements, if you're not retired or retirement age, that's for permanent residency, Lance. I will tell you that they will not give you permanent residency straight up. Most of the times they'll make you go through, even if you're retired, depending, they will make you get permanent resident temporary residency and go through those 4 years and then convert. If you're not of retirement age. Now, I retired early at 52 and I had a letter, the retirement letter. Now, if you have a retirement letter, some consulates will consider you retired because you have that retirement letter and you're getting a pension, your pension letter, and they will allow you to go straight to permanent. But the financial requirements are higher, are definitely higher. Or most people there's some people say, I retired at 50, I had my own business and blah. Oh, well, you know what? Sorry, you're not of retirement age. Go through but you can still get your the advantage of permanent is you don't have to go back and renew it. But basically, if you get temporary residency, it's basically for 1 year. The first one they give you, unless you're married to a Mexican citizen, they'll usually give you two. And then after two, if you're married to a Mexican citizen, you can get your permanent. That's what I did. Or they'll give it to you for 1 year, and then the next time you renew, it's up to 3 years, and then you renew at the end of those 3 years, at the end of 4 years total, you actually put in your you actually put in your you convert from, and there's no financial requirements. You convert from temporary to permanent. And some consulates will say, sorry, you just need to do that. I mean, it's up to the consulate, and some consulates will take that you're retired. Uh, some people will take I mean, if you have like me, that's a retired government employee, I had a pension letter, and actually I got temporary I thought I was going to bring a car. It's a long story. I've said this many a times. And the temporary, you get that pension letter. But I had a pension letter and I could have gone straight to permanent. Actually, they even asked me, why didn't I want to go to permanent? And I said, I want to bring a car. But not every consulate will say, oh, the pension letter is good enough. Some consulates are hell bent, uh, pardon the language, are hell bent on you being of retirement age. So, everybody's, yeah. Awesome, Lance. You're getting a pension, married to a Mexican for 27 years. I just registered one daughter as a Mexican citizen. Perfect, Lance. You actually, you shouldn't have any issues. And actually, the pension letter, like I said, it, if you're getting a pension, technically the law says you need to be getting a pension to go directly to permanent residency. Okay, means that you have to be a retirement age or being a pension person. The only thing is some consulates they're hell bent on the age for some reason. Uh, but most of them will accept a letter that or proof that you're pensioned. Tom M. The cell service I have on my U.S. phone only charges $5 for both Canada and Mexico, so I'd rather pay $60 extra a year and keep the unlimited plan. Yeah, actually, Tom, uh, I have an unlimited plan on my Cricket. So what I do is I have a Telcel plan. You get the cheapest Telcel plan, which is $10, and you get a Mexican number. The most phones nowadays, my iPhone takes dual eSIMs. Uh, the only thing with Telcel, you can get a prepaid AT&T with an eSIM, or some phones have an eSIM and a physical SIM card slot. You pay $10, and what I do is I keep the data switched over to my unlimited plan, so I don't worry about running out of data because the cheap plan is only 1 gigabyte of data per month, and you have a Mexican number. It's really easy. So that's what I do. The Tucson consulate accepted my proof of starting a corporate pension at 55 in order to receive that. Great, John. And like I said, most of the time with a pension, as a matter of fact, I had a pension letter, but I'm 53. And Lance, but you receive a pension, right? If you receive a pension, if you have that proof of pension, you should be able to go straight to permanent. The only thing I'm not sure, and I don't know if yes, you can, Lance, you can bypass. You are married to a Mexican citizen. You can bypass. You go straight to INM here to get your residency. You bypass the consulate. You don't have to go to the consulate. As a matter of fact, but I would take your proof of pension, and I would request. And you're married. I would request. Now, the only thing is, there might be. I know that I had an issue being married. I'm married um, to a Mexican citizen, and I got my temporary thinking we were going to bring a car. And then they told me, no, but you need to be a temporary for 2 years before you can convert over to permanent. That's the way they do it in the United States. You get your you get a temporary, or you get a residency card for 2 years, and then you have to show that you're married for 2 years. That might be what you have to do. You might still have to get temporary, but it's only for 2 years, and you get 2 years up front. You don't need to do 1 year and renew. That's probably your best bet, Lance. But what I would do is take your proof of pension over to the INM office with all your paperwork. The only thing that I'm going to advise you of right now, apart from the RNE program getting taken off, they're getting very. I don't know where you were married, Lance. If you were married in Mexico or you were married here, I mean, not here, married in Mexico here, or you're married in the United States or Canada or whatever other country. Uh, make sure you get your marriage certificates apostolized and everything matches. That's all. When I went, yep, exactly. Apostolized marriage certificate, 2 years for marriage, said because my daughter is now Mexican, instant, perfect. And that's exactly, and you should get permanent residency, to be honest with you. Uh, and your pension, and the actual law states that you have to be pensioned. It doesn't state that you have to be of retirement age. The problem with the consulates is when they say retirement, you have to be retired. They say, oh, the only way of retire, like I said, they interpret the rules as the rules are retirement age. But that's the consulate. So you can go straight, and you don't have to go through the consulate lines. You can still go through the consulate if you're in the U.S. and you want to do that. That's what I did. But that's because I didn't know the process. I did everything myself. And as a matter of fact, what happened was when I went in there, they thought I was wanting to go, and we started talking, and they go, why don't, because I had the financial means to go permanent. They were like, why don't you want to just go straight to permanent? No, I want to bring a car. And I went, and they were like, oh, okay, well, and then we started talking. They were like, are you married to you're married to a Mexican citizen? Because I had my marriage certificate. I took everything. And she looked down and she goes, you're married to a Mexican. And I had my wife's ID and everything. And she said, oh, was your wife here? Yeah, the Dallas, a lot of consulates are a mess sometimes. Um, yeah, Lance, just do it straight here in Mexico. Just have all your paperwork together. The problem is, and make sure all the names match, your passports and everything else. Um, and when she said, "Oh, is your wife here?" Yeah. Does she have her ENA with her? Yeah. Okay. We'll just give you temporary on the fact that you're married to a Mexican citizen. All of these paperwork, we don't need it. Um, but they thought that I was actually going for permanent straight out, and they didn't realize I was married to a Mexican. So, and they even asked, "Are you sure you still don't want permanent because you have your?" And they just said the easiest way is to do it if you're married to a Mexican. But like I said, Lance, the best thing to do, go straight to INM wherever you're going to go and do your process. And actually, most facilitators, if you don't feel comfortable, uh, I'm married to a Mexican. We felt comfortable. We speak Spanish. We thought, oh, not a problem. And we had to go back to INM like 5 or 6 times because every time there was a different piece of paperwork that we needed that we didn't know we needed. And they didn't tell us. And then we'd go get that piece of paperwork and show back up, and they'd say, oh, but you don't have this too. Why didn't you tell us the first time? So sometimes a facilitator will help, and they'll know exactly how to get you straight, but you should be able to go straight to permanent. And yeah, that is true. If you have a child that's Mexican, you get your permanent residency. All right. Let's see. I think we're out. I'm going to hit out almost an hour. I went over, but I'm going to go ahead and cut off here. I hope this was informative. I'll see you next week. I will be back in San Miguel de Allende next week. So the format of my live will look a little bit different. Uh, but thank you guys for coming. I always get a good, decent turnout. I love my turnout because, like I said, it's not too big, not too small. It's not like I'm talking to 2 people, and it's not like I'm talking to 100. And I know that all these people that come and they really want to know, uh, want to get the information, and I'm here available. And like Blaine said, it's probably more valuable for you guys to be able to ask me questions. Um, I don't respond to emails that quickly sometimes because like I said, my personal life is my priority. I've been having a lot of things going on in my personal life. That's why I haven't been doing videos. Um, but I've been keeping in touch with you guys. And then what's really great is I have people in here that have been here for a long time, that have been in Mexico, that are able to even correct me if I'm wrong, or even share their experiences. And so this is what I love about this community that we built. And thank you guys. And uh, thank you so much for supporting the channel. I thank my beautiful wife who signs on all the time, says hello. And my son dropped in today, very surprised. Thank you guys very much. And we'll see you next week. And like I said, the most important thing of living in Mexico is staying safe and staying informed. We'll talk to you soon.